Hey guys, Argifantes here with another Prismata game analysis. Today I bring you another game I played against Belange, and the set at first glance appears fairly straightforward. There's only really two paths you can take. You can either go Isocronus or Zamora, though of course you can always go for a Tarsier rush. I went for the Zamora option, and my opponent went for the Isocronus. But the real complexity in the set comes from the execution of the strategies. Both Zamora and Isocronus requires a lot of forward planning and allocating resources for future turns. So there's a lot of hidden depth to the set just from buy decisions every turn. So going into the game, we both go for a third engineer. This is because even though ISOs ramp up damage really fast in the mid game, it's not really fast enough to punish a heavy econ start. And plus, there's always Vivid Drone in the set. And here we see the first difference in the build. I go for Vivid Drone Conduit, and my opponent, being player 2, is able to go Triple Drone into Conduit. Now, note that Vivid Drone nets 2 gold a turn, and Triple Drone of course nets 3 gold. So my opponent is pulling slightly ahead on econ. I thought it was worth it to get the Conduit though, because it allowed me to stockpile green early, which as we'll see, is a much more valuable resource to me than gold. So I just go Triple Drone Conduit on my turn, and there's no real need to get another Vivid, because I'm not going to be doing anything with the leftover gold. And my opponent just goes for ISO Triple Drone. So this is the first major commitment either player has really made. It means that he's not planning on getting Zamora this game. So on my turn, I have a big decision to make. I can either go for an ISO mirror, or I can go for Zamora. So normally Zamora doesn't match up very well against Isocronus. By the time Zamora fires its first shot, the Isocronus player has 9 or 10 ISOs out. So the ISO player not only outdamages the Zamora player, but already has been doing damage for like 6 or 7 turns while Zamora was building. What makes me consider Zamora this game though is due to the presence of the economic ramp units like Vivid Drone, and also strong defensive options like Chieftain and Plexocell. Normally, you have to take a pretty big economic hit to get the Zamora, but with Vivid Drone, it means I only lose out on 1 extra drone of Econ. And because of the defensive units, I was confident I could hold out against the ISOs and eventually win with the economic advantage provided by Zamora. The tricky part though was ensuring I had enough green. Zamora itself is a massive green commitment, and so are Plexocell and Chieftain. So going into the next couple turns, my plan was to stockpile as much green as I could. And of course the Blast Forge was to get a wall so I can defend his first Isocronus. My opponent of course set up his turn so he can get exactly Steel Splitter and triple Isocronus. And I just get a Chieftain. So he has at least 9 damage, which means if I just leave the Chieftain back, I can just block Chieftain over wall, exactly. And I don't have any intention to really attack the Chieftain. Doing 2 damage does nothing against Steel Splitter. But if we just look at the cost of the unit, at 7 gold, 2 green, and a blue, it's actually incredibly efficient even if you just use it as a damage sponge for 7 damage. And that's exactly what happens here. And I considered just going triple drone into Conduit, which is a very natural route, but I realized that I actually needed more damage. Again, if I were to just turtle on Zamora, the Isocronus player would just do more damage than me, and eventually overwhelm me, even though I have an 8 econ advantage with the Zamora. So I needed some other way to ramp damage, and the most efficient damage to set was just plain and simple Tarsiers. Now obviously I could have went for Isocronus or something like that, but I realized that the green was already going to be very limited. I would need it for Chieftains and Plexocells and also just attacking with Zamora, so I didn't want to put any extra strain on my green resource. Instead, I'm just going to go for the good old Tarsier Rush. Opponent ramps up his conduits, again, because Chieftain and Plexocell are so good. And I'm able to defend with just the Chieftain, so I can squeeze in 2 Tarsiers here. And of course, opponent gets triple ISO. So now he's at 7 ISOs. He also got the Chieftain preemptively, so it can block on the turn Zamora fires, which is a pretty good call. But from this point on, I'm really just going to be spamming conduits and also Tarsiers. I was able to squeeze in another chieftain here, which is going to be very important, because this is how I'm going to survive his next volley of Isochronous. And as we see, because I have the chieftain, I have exactly enough to defend by just buying a wall. This means I can get another 2 Tarsiers, another conduit, and a healthy amount of engineers. So I basically stopped buying drones from this point. There's really no need. I just green at this point is way more valuable than actual golds, and also just once the Zamora actually fires, it also gives me 8 gold econ boost. So note that I have 14 gold, 14 green right now. That's going to be very important. It means I'll have enough green to buy everything I need, at least for the next couple turns. And he actually leaves the 2 chieftains back, which means I get to save a couple engineers. This makes sense, of course. The chieftains are going to be used to block my Zamora, which is firing this turn. And on this turn, again, I just spam more Tarsiers. They're really just the most efficient way to get attack in this set. And rather than, say, going for a wall here to defend, I just leave a drone back because I can use the blue to get a chieftain, and that's very important. The chieftains are going to be my main form of defense this game, and Plexo cells are kind of the oh shit button. This is when I just don't have enough. I can convert some of my drones. And I also opt to go for a second Blast Forge. This is so I can go wall chieftain every single turn. And at this point, my opponent is actually out of Isochronuses, so he's just resorted to Gauss cannons. Now, because he didn't get an Animus, uh, which makes sense since he's not using his green as heavily as I am, he's really just ramping up with Steel Splitters and Gauss cannons from this point in terms of attack. But as we can see, because the chieftains aren't actually attacking, we've sort of leveled out on damage. His Isochronuses do on average 10 damage a turn, and the Gauss cannons do 4. So with my Tarsiers and my Zamora, that's like 16. He's doing 14 plus the Steel Splitter 16. So we're like pretty even on damage. The difference is I have slightly higher economy from the Zamora, and I also have more green stockpiled due to my extra conduits. But even at this point, the game is still going to be pretty close. He just loses 2 of his chieftains here. And yeah, once again, this is the power of Isochronous. If he was actually only doing 14 damage a turn, I would not have the Plexo Cell, but because he's doing all the damage on one turn, yeah, I just had to press the panic button and double Plexo Cell here. I do have enough to defend, fortunately. And the other thing to notice is I got a Rhino here instead of a Tarsier. Not only does Rhino attack one turn earlier, but I realized that I would be needing a bit more defense, so I don't have to Plexo Cell as much. So even though Rhino is not consistent damage, right, it only can attack twice, I'm basically preemptively buying defense and also getting some amount of pressure at least for the next 2 turns. And that's going to be my basic strategy from this point on. I'm just going to get 2 chieftains. I did not actually get those Tarsiers. Instead, I'm getting 2 rhinos. Finished off my conduit supply. Considered another chieftain. Was like, maybe I should just wall and double NG here. And yeah, because I didn't want him to be attacking with his Steel Splitters and chieftains and killing my rhinos. So I just got a wall here. And yeah, Rhinos, if you can actually attack with it twice and then block with it, is very cost efficient. You get 2 points of damage, which could like kill 2 engineers, and then you just have 2 defense. And as we continue on the game, we see that because of the chieftains, I can defend Zamora actually fairly comfortably. And the rhinos actually put me over the edge in terms of damage. Without the rhinos, my opponent and I are doing roughly the same amount of damage, but because of the rhinos, I am doing like 4 or 5 more damage than my opponent every single turn. So At this point, game's pretty much over. And yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game. The whole theme of the game, I guess, was planning ahead. For me, I just had to get some early conduits since I needed green. Green was going to be precious. And because I had such a huge pool of stockpiled green, I was able to successfully defend the Isochronous Rush with chieftains, plexal cells, walls, and even get out a bunch of Tarsiers. And of course, Zamora eventually just won the game for me. So that's it for this week. I will see you guys next week.